Is everybody still awake? What's going on? Welcome into 104.3 Fans Halftime Chill presented by Coors Light. Will Peterson, James Merrilat, Rachel Beal hanging out with you. I'm barely awake, but raise your hand if you're expecting to hear J.J. Watt wins NFC Defensive Player of the Week on Tuesday because, wow, is he showing up this Broncos offense hard. You guys, this is just absolutely brutal to watch. We even have a comment already saying, I missed scoring 10 points at halftime. We knew it was going to be hard with the battle of the backup QBs, but I just don't even know where to begin, Will Peterson.
Yeah, well, you guys are my first human contact in 4 days because I've been at home sick. So it's nice to see you guys. It's nice to come on the show and vent a little bit together. Listen, my analysis from that half is J.J. Watt's wrecking the game, right? The stadium at kickoff, the crowd, which I know we'll get to, was pathetic. Still is, a little better now, but pathetic at kickoff. Tickets were $10. Mm-hmm. And 3, Brett Rippon, he has no time. Like, he hasn't been good, but this O-line is just absolutely terrible. So when you see Todd McShay say the Broncos should take a running back in the first round, it's like, what are we talking about? I know they're injured. I know they're beat up. It has to be an offensive lineman. Those are my 3 takeaways from legitimately maybe the most boring half of football I've ever watched.
Yeah, listen, and I think there's recency bias, and that may sound hyperbolic, but Will, I'm with you. I've been watching this team since 1978. I tweeted this before the game. I've never been less excited for a game than I was today. Cannot think of a time when it was this bad. Even when they were 4-12 at the end of the McDaniels era after he had been canned, at least it was, we'll get to watch Tim Tebow. That'll make it interesting. This game had nothing interesting about it, and it has still failed to live up to my expectations. Like, my expectations were as close to 0 as you can get, and it's still been worse than I thought. I will say this, and I get that the offensive line is a little bit more banged up than it has been in recent weeks, but I think we're learning once again today. Russell Wilson hasn't been good this year, but it ain't a Russell Wilson problem because this offense is way worse with Brett Rippon. They're actually running the ball pretty well today, and Brett Rippon can't do anything to take advantage. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think either team has run a play in the red zone today. We've had 3 field goal attempts. They've all been long. Brandon McManus missed from 38, so they might have been at the 20 when they kicked it, but I don't think they ran a play in the red zone. Unbelievably bad. I mean, and I do think there's sort of has been this building momentum for bringing Nathaniel Hackett back, which is crazy to me. This team is so bad in every way offensively, and he's an offensive coach. They're so bad in every way that says, hey, you're just a poorly coached team, such as leading the league in penalties. I can't believe it, but they have a moral victory last week. It was sort of starting to go that way. Then you saw Adam Schefter's tweet this morning that was clearly planted by somebody saying, hey, NFL teams have spent $800 million in the last 5 years on coaches that have been fired. That's laying the groundwork for somebody out there to stick with a coach, and it's going to be an excuse to be patient. Adam Schefter is very tightly connected in Denver. Wouldn't shock me if that was something that got floated out of here, that Denver's the one that leaked that. Greg Penner, I know you're new to this, but if you go there today and you watch this and you see all those things Will talked about and the crowd and just the terrible product and the fact that your field is painted dirt, at some point, if you don't make sweeping changes, then you now become public enemy number 1 in Denver because you're the only one who can do anything about it. That's it. Nobody else can. So this has been a disaster, and hopefully the one positive that comes out of it is it ends this sort of slowly building momentum for bring everybody back. That's a terrible idea. It's a terrible notion that needs to be put to bed.
It's embarrassing to have only 3 points at half, but it's something that a lot of Bronco fans are unfortunately used to, just not even seeing touchdowns or the red zone. But we're going to get into the numbers because that's like a huge thing with how empty it is. And I love how Fox keeps bringing up how it's a sellout and whatever. I'm like, whoever's saying this, you just need to absolutely stop because it's embarrassing. But I actually did learn something today. When you have a team this bad, you don't really expect to learn anything else. I learned that Brandon McManus is a very mediocre kicker. it is kind of embarrassing how much credit we've really given him. And he goes out there and he muffs that punt from 38 yards. That's embarrassing.
He has missed 8 field goals this year. That leads the league. It's tied with Cade York from Cleveland for the most misses. I think Mace had the stat that he's 29th in percentage of kicks less than 60 yards. So that's not good either. I said he was a mediocre kicker, and people came back at me. And you know what? Everybody who came back at me is right. He's not a mediocre kicker at this point. He's a bad kicker, and he's even worse when it means something. Like, I was shocked today he missed from 38 because nothing was on the line. Would you want Brandon McManus right now in a big game? Let's just play the fun hypothetical game, right? They bring in a new coach. The new coach fixes Russ. This defense stays good, and they're good next year. That seems crazy, but let's just play it. And they're playing in Week 18. You got to win to make the postseason, to end the streak. Brandon McManus down 2 from 48 yards. You feeling good about it? Because I'm not. I don't have any confidence in that guy. I think you would have thought going into the year, hey, that's one spot they won't have to worry about. I think everything's up for grabs this offseason. I think kicker's another spot they need to upgrade.
Well, and let me say this, too. We have this romantic memory of Brandon McManus because he's from the Super Bowl 50 team. And, guys, he was so good in those playoffs, right? He didn't miss a single kick against the Steelers, the Patriots, or the Panthers on the way to Super Bowl 50. But guess what? He's just a shell of his former self at this point. He's just lost it for whatever reason. So there needs to be an ability to separate of like, yeah, he was a great player back in the day, but that was 2015, 2016. We're in 2022, almost 2023. I'm with you. I tweeted James, it needs to be on their list. I think it'll be lower on their list because their list is so long of things they need to do. But yeah, it's absolutely something they have to look at this offseason.
And it makes me think back to training camp when we saw Brandon McManus in the ref uniform going out there. It's somebody who's been told for a majority of his life, oh, hey, you're really, really good. Well, you have to continue to be really good. You have to practice. And I know people don't want to hear that. And what we saw at a training camp, you have to continue to practice your craft at all times. And so it just kind of shows, again, leading back to Nathaniel Hackett and the way he allowed this team to prepare for the season. But I do think Nathaniel Hackett is a little bit on the hot seat just in the organization, from management, because when McManus missed that field goal, you don't see coaches get super angry. When they will flash the shot over to a coach, you see a little bit of like okay. No, he dropped, I'm pretty sure, the F-bomb as he turned away. Like, he knew that this is just another thing that's adding on to, hey, I could possibly get fired at the end of this year.
Yeah, and it's, listen, is it Nathaniel Hackett's fault that Brandon McManus missed a 38-yard kick today? No, directly. But indirectly, I think you make an interesting point about training camp, right? Everybody talks about how Russell Wilson doesn't have any competition. Who was Brandon McManus's competition during training camp? There was none, right? And when was the last time he had any competition? I think at the very least, you need to bring in somebody to push him. And I don't have the number right in front of me. I can look it up, but he's also a guy that has a pretty big cap number. So if you're looking for ways, hey, how do you save some money and have some cash to go out and some cap space to go out and improve this offensive line, go out and find a skill position player that is at least a threat to go on the other side of Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, I mean, you're paying a big price for a kicker that if you're going to pay a premium for a kicker, he better be Justin Tucker, although Justin Tucker had a rough weekend too, right? But a guy who's very, very consistent. Brandon McManus is the furthest thing from that at this point. So you got to make more than 75% of your kicks if that's the kind of dough you're going to make.
Well, and there's a little bit of arrogance with McManus too, right? He's best friends with Von Miller. He's one of the only guys left, or he's the only guy left from the Super Bowl 50 team, sort of what I was getting at. Like, Brandon McManus is a big fan of Brandon McManus. We all know that, right? Like, he loves that the cameras come and watch him play golf. He loves that he's, the center of attention wherever he goes because he plays for the Broncos. Dude, you're the kicker, right? And when you're making all your kicks and you're setting records, all good. But when you stink and you're in your ref jersey and you just think you're, the gift to earth or whatever, then, yeah, we're ready to move on for a variety of reasons.
Brandon McManus's cap hit next year, $4.981 million. So he's basically a $5 million kicker. Now, his dead cap's $2.4, so you only save half of that by moving on, and then you'll have to replace him with someone, right? Your other kicker's not going to be free, but you probably could save some cap space and certainly a lot of cash if you decide to move on from Brandon McManus. It's in the conversation now. Has to be.
No, I agree. Okay, we do have to talk about the no-shows, though. It's funny because usually we hear the number of no-shows somewhat in the second quarter. I have a coffee bet for a coffee break going on. I have never, and you guys, I tweeted out, I said, this makes me so sad to see Mile High Empower Field so bare and so empty. I've got like friends and family there at the game, and they're like, there are rows just empty behind us. I've never seen it. And people are like, well, Rachel, of course it's the bad product. And I get it. But as somebody who is a lifelong Bronco fan, it makes you really sad, and it makes you hope the ownership really takes a big look at it and says, this is completely unacceptable. We have to make the change. And it comes at coaching, possibly a GM. James, I'm still with you on the quarterback, but like something has to change. Otherwise, I don't think there will be any hope for Broncos country next season. Well,
yeah, I mean, listen, we all said the message had to be sent by Broncos fans. It wasn't last week, and I don't blame them because it was the Chiefs, it was Mahomes, there was a lot of KC fans there, and it turned out to be a great game. But today, this sucks. There's two teams playing for absolutely nothing. It's a battle of backup QBs. It's Brett Rippon versus Colt McCoy. Like, give me an incentive for someone to go to this game today. So, yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, it didn't happen, but we all know why it didn't happen. This is the reckoning. Week 18 against the Chargers may be the reckoning. And you look at the shots Andrew Mason posted, guys. I wrote it in the story at denverfan.com. They weren't 30 minutes before kickoff. They weren't 20 minutes before kickoff. That was the most bare I've ever seen that stadium for a Broncos game when there was football going on. There were pockets of that looked like the high school state championship, just kind of scattered in and out of this crowd. And there were section guys with more empty seats than human bodies.
yeah.
You know what, though? I applaud Broncos country for it. And they've already paid for the tickets, so they're just eating them. But they're not going down and paying for parking. They're not paying for beers and Cokes and hot dogs and popcorn and everything else they get gouged for. And they're sending a message. And look, it's unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. But we're also in an unprecedented era here of losing and futility. And let's face it, the world is different than it was in 1982 when people would go down there, even if the Broncos had a losing record. It's better to watch it at home now. You're watching on HDTV. It's fantasy football playoffs. So, hey, do I want to stay home and watch Red Zone and keep track of all my team and what my guys are doing, or do I want to go watch Colt McCoy and Brett Rippon? And it's a glorified preseason game. So, you know, if I had tickets today, would I have gone? No, I wouldn't have gone. I just stayed home too. So kudos to Broncos country. They made a good decision.
Do you think if Russell Wilson was playing, it would have made that much of a difference? I do think more people would have showed up just to see Russ, but do you think it would have been a major difference?
No, I don't think the place would have been full or would have even appeared to be full. And then whatever their number is, if it's not 10,000, they're fibbing. They're fibbing.
Yeah, no, I'm
based on the pictures at kick, it should be 25,000. A third of that stadium was empty. Maybe more. Like, I would encourage everyone to go look at Mace's pictures. Like, those look like the shots when it's an hour on the game clock and everyone's warming up, not when the game clock's at 0 and we're kicking off. It was crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, if you stay awake, come hang out with us post game too. It'll be myself, D-Mac, and James Merlott. We'll break down all the second half action as well, and probably talk about the future of this Broncos organization, because that's all we have to look forward to. For Will Peterson, James Merlott, Rachel Beal, thank you so much for hanging out with us here on Halftime Chill, presented by Coors Light. Bye, guys.